Welcome to the Fly Fishing Insider Podcast, where each week we speak with brands, icons, innovators, and trailblazers within the fly fishing industry, exploring both the successes and failures they've encountered along the way to become who they are today. But first, if you have not yet subscribed to the podcast or joined our email list, please do so by going to the flyfisherinsiderpodcast.com, or you can also find us on Instagram at flyfisherinsiderpodcast. Now let's begin. Welcome to the Fly Fishing Insider Podcast. Today our guest is Zack Williams. He is the editor of Swing the Fly magazine. Here today to tell us more about everything that he's got going on and to be a part of our steelhead, two-handed kind of month here. Zack, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, Greg. Great to be here.
No worries. I know we just talked quickly off air and you are staying safe and, you know, it's a little smoky where you guys are. But other than that, how's it going?
Good. Crazy times in the world, you know, but looking forward to hopefully getting the smoke out of here and thinking about a lot of the Swing the Fly magazine people are over there in Oregon and California and stuff. So thinking about them and hoping they're doing okay. And a lot of steelhead water's been affected by this, but doing well here, my current home in Missoula, Montana. So.
Yeah, no doubt. What, just really quickly, like, what are some of the guys and girls or people that you have out there? What are they saying? What's happening to the rivers?
Well, you know, I think the most prominent one right now that you'd hear about is a lot of the North Umpqua River. Some of the most storied water in all of steelhead fly fishing has burned in the past week. Including the home, I believe, and I hope I'm mistaken, but the home of Frank and Jean Moore, who have done so much for the river and so much for steelheading. So, yeah, really thinking about them and the river and the all that water and the effects on the future of the fishery. Hopefully that'll recover well, but you know, a lot of that really renowned water to fish is the banks along there burned. So
no doubt.
Tough time.
Yeah, no doubt. It's just it's not good at all. So you know, and I know our hearts are going out to them as well. So up here in Canada, we're in British Columbia, so and we are getting the smoke as well. So definitely. But you know what, Zack, let's turn this around here and let's talk about yourself and let's talk about Swing the Fly magazine. So when did you walk me through how you got started into fly fishing and two-handed rods and everything that you were at on the level that you're at right now?
Yeah, sure. I'll give you a brief synopsis. I grew up in Michigan and was lucky to have a dad who took me fishing all the time, and I was only 8 or 9 years old when I caught my first steelhead, and got interested in steelhead fly fishing when I was 12. And Trey Combs' Steelhead Fly Fishing, the book, kind of what I would consider the Bible of steelhead fly fishing, had come out, and my dad had purchased a copy, which I quickly took as my own, and really grew up following that, and my interest in it all came from there. And so I think I was 16 when I bought my first spey rod. Things were just kind of getting going, especially in the Great Lakes, and went from there and just really got into it. And so in about a decade ago, I guess, I moved from Michigan to Washington State in the Olympic Peninsula, just kind of to chase my dream of steelhead fishing. Became a guide a little while after that, and then in 2013, 2014, just kind of this whole Swing the Fly magazine just kind of came together, really centered on a lot of the people that I'd met who were doing some amazing things and wanting to document the history of that. So
cool.
That's the really brief synopsis. Let me know what you want me to expand on.
Yeah, you bet. I'll just I'll definitely you mentioned a lot of content in there, so I'm gonna jump right into it and pick some of it apart. So when you I'm gonna go back to the moment that you picked up the two-handed rods. Were two-handed rods a thing like back in Michigan at that time? Were they just starting to become as popular as they are, or were you like earlier on in that trend? Like, walk me through that.
Well, just starting to show up, I would say. It'd been around on the West Coast, for a decade or more, back into the 80s, and really taking off out west in the 90s. So that I picked up my first spey rod there in 2000, and no, I don't think there was a lot of people in the Great Lakes who were doing that, but there was certainly some. So I kind of just happened into it by reading Trey Combs' book, and his book came out in 91, and there was just the very first briefest mention of these double hand rods. And so that's where I picked up on this idea. And then I happened to be working in this little sporting goods store in Michigan, and we got a pro deal on St. Croix rods out of the Great Lakes as well. But they had just come out with their first two-hander model, and I was able to pay $92 for my first spey rod. So I bought it without knowing anything about what I was doing. But within a couple years, I'd ran into my home water was the Grand River in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and there was specifically 3 people that were regulars down there with the two-hand rod. And once I saw them doing that and finding a little success, and they gave me a few pointers and stuff, that helped tremendously. So it was, I would say it was just kind of getting going in the Great Lakes. And then, it really started to take off. Well, I don't know, 2006, somewhere in there, 2006, 2007. By the time I moved away in 2010, it was pretty popular. We were having a big spey clave, and you were just seeing more and more two-hand rods every year.
Oh, for sure. I fully agree with that. And that's why I brought that up, because I think it's kind of cool. Now, what, Skagit heads and stuff like that weren't even existent. You guys weren't even using them, so I shouldn't say they weren't existent. You weren't even using them. What were you using back then?
Yeah.
Were you?
Yeah, like I said, I didn't know anything when I first got that spey rod. I bought a double taper line that was very mismatched for the rod, and I looped this. Cortland used to have these little sink tips that came in this little, pack that had a little plastic pack and had a couple of braided loops, and you cut it to the length you want. And so I looped a couple of those onto a double taper, which is probably not the easiest way to go about it. But and then I got a Rio wind cutter, became commercially available somewhere in that time frame, but took me a few years just to learn that information and everything. But I got a Rio wind cutter, and then a Rio mid spey, which was a longer version of that. And then I think the first commercial Skagit made by Rio became available somewhere. I want to say it was 2003, but again, nobody should hold me to these dates. But that was at least somewhere around there was when I figured out about it, and that certainly became a very useful thing for throwing the sink tips and bigger flies and stuff, and helped cut the learning curve of spey casting.
Yeah, no doubt. It's funny when you're mentioning all these products, because I do remember these products, these earlier on products, and 2000, that's 17 years ago, man. It's it's aging me here, but it's funny, just also to look at the advancement that Two Hand has taken in the past, you know what I mean, in the past 17 years is like night and day. So what are some of the biggest like
It
advancements?
changed a lot.
Yeah, like what are some of the biggest advancements you've seen as, you know, as being like a, so with your finger on such a pulse of this sport?
Yeah, I mean, the gear and the equipment, you know, like Skagit lines really did change a lot, I think, for steelheaders. In particular, you know, I'm a guy who fishes a lot of summer steelhead river where perfectly fine with the floating line and small flies, and you don't need a Skagit line at all. But the Skagit lines and their short, aggressive taper really opened up the winter steelhead game for a lot of people, and I think most people would find it a little easier to pick up with that style line. And then, yeah, over these years, even since the first one that came out, they've refined those tapers and stuff, and made a lot of advancements where just the efficiency of the casting has become so much better so quickly. And rods certainly, you know, new graphites and new resins and everything. The actions were refined from those early rods as well. They got shorter and lighter to match the Skagit lines and stuff. And then, you know, the neat thing now is in the last couple of years, I think you're seeing a resurgence of the longer rods and the longer lines as well. And those have been refined where casting them is probably a little easier than it was casting the original long lines that we were using early in the 2000s. You know, the tapers now are so much more effective. So it's just these companies have been building on you know, the previous generation and getting a little better on each one. So it's a neat evolution.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. So then let's circle back to the magazine. In those days, so you moved out west and to Washington. Is that when you started you know, Swing the Fly?
Swing the Fly started a few years after I moved west. I started to get to know quite a few people. You know, I'd become a guide myself, and through events and everything else, I'd gotten to know quite a few of the people in this little small niche fly fishing world of the two-hand rod, and a lot of these people were doing such neat things, photographs and writing, and a lot of it was ending up, you know, Facebook was starting off and stuff like that, or taking off, I should say, and blogs and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a lot of this neat stuff going on, but the thing with social media and everything, you can put a photo up there or write something, and it's there for a few minutes or a day or two, and then it's forgot about. And I wanted to see some of that stuff stick around for longer. So that's how it started, with a lot of help from a lot of people. Marty Shepard and Mia Shepard were some of the people who helped tremendously in getting it off the ground, and Jonathan Barlow, who lives up in BC, up your way, and Mike Kinney, the very first issue of Swing the Fly. I did an interview with Mike Kinney, the godfather of the Skagit, and he helped tremendously as well. And then there's just more names than I could ever do justice to who helped make it go. But yeah, the idea started 2012, 2013, and finally we started. The first issue came out in 2014. It was all digital then. We did 9 digital issues, and people kept asking for a print magazine. And so the first, we did like a Kickstarter campaign to try to find some money for it and everything else. And it was well.
How'd that go? What, like, tell me about that.
We were successful, you know. We did like a pre-sale subscriptions and a Kickstarter campaign and raised the money we needed to print a year of the magazine and try to make it go from there. And after year one, it was never going to get anybody rich, but it was at least somewhat sustainable. So we were able to do another year, and it's kind of been like that year by year. Try to keep it going, and so now, that first issue was came out in January 2016. So we're just wrapping up I'm going to send the 20th issue to press, 20th print issue to press this week, and it'll come out in the end of October. So
awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. So when you got this, let me ask you really quickly: are you rich now?
Heck no.
Okay.
You find anybody in the fishing industry who's gotten rich?
I was just going to say that.
I don't just share their secrets.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say that. I was thinking the same.
So.
No, I agree. No, Zach, it's just funny. I love how you guys were innovative and you went to Kickstarter for that. I actually did not know that, and that's kind of cool. So, it
was neat.
Here's where I want to go with it. Like, what is the obviously the core focus has always been like a style of fishing and whatnot. Like, walk us through, for those that don't know about the magazine or have never heard it, but they're my listeners or my trout guys or whatever. Like, what is your magazine about? What is the articles about? And what do you guys hope to accomplish with the magazine?
It's Swing the Fly is dedicated to spay casting and swinging flies. So the traditional wet fly swing, the traditional steelhead fly fishing, and Atlantic salmon methodology. We cover everything. I've got a team of writers everywhere from Europe and all over the world to the Great Lakes is something we have a big focus on, and then the Northwest, and we pay tribute to the flies and fly tying, the techniques, but also the art and history. There's a strong artistic component to it. I feature a lot of artists who are doing artwork related to swinging a fly or salmon and steelhead, and we also try to have a really strong conservation message and inspire people to want to protect wild salmon and steelhead. And I guess the last thing I'd add is in the last few years, the two-handed rod trout spay has taken off, and so we like to cover the trout spay and the swinging of flies for trout as well.
I was going to ask you about
a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the trout spay for sure. So, because it has taken off, it's definitely taken off, and I think it's here to stay for sure. What do you think about that?
I think I personally I've moved from steelhead country to Montana in the last year, so trout spay has become a regular part of what I like to do. And the neat thing about trout and trout spay is there's so much room for experimentation, and whereas with steelhead, I take where I guided on the Clearwater River in Idaho and give me just a handful of the same 3 flies, and I could be very confident that I could show up day after day, year after year with those same 3 flies and be successful. Trout, you never know. Hatches changing and food sources changing. It can be different every 5 minutes, so there's so much to experiment with how you're retrieving the fly and stuff like that. So I think it's a really fun thing, and it helps people who like to steelhead and salmon fish kind of stay connected to it during the off seasons, or if they live far away and only get limited trips. Great way to practice, and spay casting is a great technique to learn, even if you don't have a two-handed rod. So there's lots out there, and trout spay can offer a whole lot to about anybody. And I guess I should mention, you can get the two-hander or the spay rod, and you can fish for stripers and smallmouth bass and about anything that you want. So, yeah. it's a technique, you know?
Yeah, oh, for sure. And that's where I'm going to ask you, because I know I was using a trout spay, I think it was late July. And, I just, one of the challenges I had, and I don't know if it's just the grain weight versus the rod, I just didn't feel that rod floating. And I don't know if that's a common challenge or if it's just a mixed match of rods versus the line that I had on. And it just, yeah, like the difficulty, I'm being honest here. I mean, it was challenging, and a little frustrating. And and then I asked someone else and they're like, did you use a tip? I'm like, well, I wasn't even fishing deep water. So, you know what I mean? Like it was like mid, like a little over, say less than my knee. Right. So I didn't want to have a tip. I didn't want to get hung up. And so what are some ways, like I'm asking for myself here, how I could overcome that?
Yeah. The first thing is to, trust somebody at your local fly shop to help you match the line to the rod, which certainly is very important and for what you want to do. So, we were talking about the Skagit lines, of course, and they're designed to have a sink tip on there. And if you don't have some sort of properly matched tip on there, they're not going to cast very well. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have these Scandi lines and different lines that are designed to fish more surface oriented or just subsurface. And if you put too heavy a sink tip or too big a fly on there, you're really going to struggle. So some basic understanding goes a long ways, but it can be a little overwhelming and daunting at first. So, you lean on somebody who knows. Then the second thing, especially when we're getting into these trout spay and somebody's picking one up for the first time, you've got spay rods, two-handed rods, the line rating system that they are matched with is not the same as what a single hand rod is matched. So let's just say you have a 9-foot 5-weight single hander, and your typical floating trout line is something like the 150 to 170 grains, I believe. Yeah. And so a 5-weight spay rod is throwing a line that is probably in the 350 grain range. So double that. So if you go and just buy a spay rod and it's got a number 5 on it, and you think, oh, I can just throw that 5-weight line off my single hand rod on there, it's going to be half the weight that is necessary to make that rod bend. And so you're going to be in rough shape from the start. So, that's just something to pay attention to, and another reason to get some help.
Yeah, I definitely I know what you're saying on that. When I got the recommendations here, it was through someone. I'm not going to say who or whatnot, but so we did the setup that they suggested, and it just maybe there was a typo in the number of the grain weight there, but it just did not load. It was not. It's fun when it's not fun when it's not loading. So,
no, you want to get a line and a rod that are matched together. Makes it a whole lot more fun. That's like going back to how I started out, with a very mismatched setup, and things became a lot more enjoyable when I got one that kind of mashed together.
Oh, you bet, for sure. So you mentioned your writers, and you mentioned that you have numerous writers writing for you guys, and on the journalism side. So, like, where do you get these guys from? Are they friends? Are they just industry professionals? Like, how do you reach out to them? How does one become involved? If someone's like, hey, I got an article. Like, how do they just say, hey, Zach, I want to submit an article? Like, or do you have set writers, or do you give out topics? Like, I know some of the photographers, for instance, if they're doing a photo shoot for Bass Pro, I know they're notorious for sending out, like, here's the projects and the shot list that we're going to do, and they all bid for it. Do you send out, like, hey, we want to write these articles, or do they submit them? Like, walk us through how that works, because you guys are always producing great content.
Yeah, I've been really fortunate. My select team, I've got 5 people right now who I asked to be regular contributors. And beyond that, the magazine's always been really reader supported. So much of our content has just come from our readers, and this the little spay casting two-hand niche is so small that you just get to know everybody, and I welcome contributions from anybody and anywhere, and work with all sorts of people, whether it's professional writers or somebody who wants to get their first thing published and just has an idea that they really want to see come to print. So it's a little bit of everything. Swing the Fly's always been far too small to have, like you mentioned, a big Bass Pro style budget to send people on assignment. So it's more about looking for those opportunities to work with people.
Mm-hmm. No, that's cool. Definitely cool. So it's authentic, genuine, all the things people want in a magazine for sure. Well, another question.
Well, yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to ask you, I was just basically going to ask you, so you say it's a small niche, and you know what? I mean, it is a small niche, but you guys have done so well in that niche. And why do you think that is?
Community. It's close knit group of people, Mm-hmm. If I run through the mailing list of our subscribers, I've recognized so many of the names and have met so many of the people at events and stuff like that. I mentioned that Kickstarter that we ran in 2015 and the magazine coming out in 2016. By my guess, 90% of those people are still subscribers to the magazine, which is pretty crazy in the magazine world. So I've just been fortunate to a lot of great people who want to see, if Swing the Fly goes away, then there's probably not going to be a magazine, at least for the time being, that is solely dedicated to this niche. So, yeah, I think it's just the readers who want it, and very thankful for that.
Oh, for sure, without a doubt. And I know we want it too. Loving what you're doing, Zach. Let's shift gears here. Was when you're at the shows and stuff like that, or you're out, doing seminars and teaching, fly shops. What's your most common questions? So I want to educate people. What are some of the most common questions or myths that you got for people using two-hand rods? You must be hey, how do I want to get started, or I want to do this? What's some of those questions that you can help us educate people on today?
Oh man, that's a tougher question. We haven't really had these events all year. People want to know about the different types of lines and stuff, because that's daunting, and the basics of the casting. It's all over the map. I usually, when I'm asked to present at these, I usually am talking about different casting techniques and styles, and or just the basics of spay casting. As new people are getting into it, the casting is very different, and so we try to break it down into terminology and common components. So I think there's a lot in common with single hand casting, although some people might disagree with that, but what makes a fly rod bend makes a fly rod bend, and so it doesn't know whether we call it a spay rod or not. So try to break that down and get to the root of things. So spay casting is basically what we'd call a dynamic roll cast. So most fly fishers are very familiar with a roll cast. So the spay cast is just a roll cast where the line stays in motion. A roll cast, we kind of lift the rod back to 10 or 11 o'clock, kind of pause, let the line set, and then roll it forward. Spay cast is going to keep that line moving, and then the second part of it is it's going to have a change of direction. So we're starting the line from straight downstream from our casting position, and adding a change of direction back across the river. So we want to repeat that process consistently. But the spay cast has those two things. Line stays in motion and it changes direction, whereas a roll cast typically goes straight back in the same direction. So,
no doubt.
I don't know if I answered it there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you got what we want. We got the gist of it. I mean, it's pretty complex. I mean, you say it's not, but it is pretty complex for, inner workings, and it's one of those things that I think most people need to do. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Need to do it. Need to get some expert instruction. We all know there's videos all over the internet on all of it, and some of them are good, some of them are not. Deciphering that is difficult. So, one-on-one instruction is a great way to go. Yeah. Definitely.
Another question that I have for you, and I know it's a question that I always get quite a bit when people ask about steelhead and stuff like that, is reading water and what type of water to sort of look for. And my question to you is what's the most common water that, the fish hold in, or what is the most, ideal water in your mind? How would you read water? From you, like, let's hear it.
Yeah, absolutely. The common description for steelhead water and Atlantic salmon water is different. But steelhead water, we've always talked about walking pace water that's 3 to 6 feet deep being the ideal steelhead fly water. Not that they don't hold in different water than that, but water that they both hold in and we can present a fly in. So, can kind of vision that, walking pace gives you a little bit of idea, but it's not the heavy ripple water and it's not the dead still water. It's somewhere in the middle, and you're looking for water that offers them enough depth to feel secure from predators. But if it's a deep, swirly mess of current, we're probably not going to be able to present a fly effectively to them, no matter what tip or anything we have. So we're looking for water that's in the middle, nice steady current speed. If you can have some bigger rock in it, whether it's bigger, softball and grapefruit sized cobble, or the ideal one maybe mixed with some bigger boulders isolated through there, and a nice kind of dark look to the current. That's probably going to be pretty ideal water.
Yeah, no doubt.
And the neat thing about the swinging fly methodology is it's a process of elimination. So we're not going to stand in one spot and cast all day. We're going to go searching for that fish. So we're going to start at the top of that, find that ideal looking water, or what we think is ideal, and start at the top of it and make a cast and fish it out, and then take a few steps and do it again and work our way down through the likely water. And if we don't catch a fish, we're not going to fret about it. We're just going to go to the next good piece of water and cover that and keep going until it works out. So it's a process where, you take your best guess at where a fish might be, but if he's not there, you're not going to worry about it.
Yeah. Why do you think too many people worry about it, or they grow roots in their boots? Do you know what I mean by that? Looking at that water.
Yeah. Everybody's got their own fishing pace and everything, but dealing with a migratory fish, it's going back to comparing it to trout. We take a good trout river, you can be pretty confident that in every single spot there's a trout in it. But when you're talking about a migratory fish that's not overly plentiful and big rivers, there's a very high likelihood that any piece of water, even when it's the best possible piece of steelhead water you can find, there's a high likelihood that it's not going to be holding a fish at any given instant. So if you're too set on this one spot's going to produce my fish, you're probably going to go wanting quite often. Covering water is certainly my methodology, and I probably move a little bit faster down the river than most. A lot of people, they're 2 steps at a time's always been the mantra for the swung fly fishermen, but I probably am taking 3, 4, 6, 8. But
okay.
it all that style fits our personalities as well. I'm low on patience, and my home river, Idaho's Clearwater, sometimes the runs are 1/4 mile long. So at 2 little baby steps at a time, the sun's going to go down before you ever get to the bottom of it. So I'm moving.
It's kind of funny. Guy's low on patience, but he fishes one of the hardest fish in the world. So.
Yeah, it happens, doesn't it? Yeah, that's kind of contradictory.
That's a little ironic. So when you were guiding then on the rivers, were some of your clients like, hey man, like why are we moving, or you know what I mean? Like was that ever a challenge or?
Yeah, to be honest, it's always a challenge to get people to move at the speed I would like them to move, but the thing about guiding and fishing is it's when I'm a guide, it's not about me. So if the client is enjoying the pace and they're suiting what they enjoy doing, then that's great. But yeah, typically I would be encouraging people to move a little quicker if they're comfortable with it. So yeah.
Definitely well said, for sure. Zach, I do have to ask you, tell me a story about when you guys were, one of your favorite rivers or something like that you can share with us.
Oh man. Yeah. Gotta pull something off the top of my head here, don't I? Yeah, a story popped into my head. My first winter, living on the Olympic Peninsula, I moved out there to fish, and I was learning my way around with the hopes of becoming a guide at some point. So I was just fishing every day, learning as much as I could about the rivers that were relatively new to me. I'd been going out there for a couple years, but I was fishing one late January, and I was all by myself or with my dog, and we came into, and the rivers of the Olympic Peninsula are changed drastically with every flood. But I found this little hole, and I called it the Little House Rocks, and these rocks almost built like a home in the middle of this run. You could see them poking up in just this dark hole in the middle of them that was only, I don't know, 4 or 6 foot across, and there's a big rock on each side in that hole in there. And I flipped my fly in there. I was standing on the outside bank of the river, and the trees were overhanging. There's all these willow trees and everything overhanging, and the bank was washed out. And I just rolled 20 feet of line out and swung my fly into that, and the line just came tight. And this fish took off out of this pool and 100 and some yards downriver into this rapid. And as I mentioned, I was on this outside bank, and there's these willows and stuff. So I'm climbing over trees and down and through it. And somehow, this fish was going to disappear down this rapid. And so I just locked the drag down as tight as I could. And somehow the fish stopped and came back up into the pool. And I ended up landing this fish. And to this day, it was one of the biggest steelhead I've ever caught. It was, somewhere close to 20-pound.
Wow.
Olympic Peninsula winter steelhead, bright as can be. And, so this is just part of the story. It was, really special fish. And I couldn't believe it. And my biggest steelhead to that date. And so, I was through the roof ecstatic with everything, and went home, and a few days went by, and I was like, I'm going to go fish that spot again. And so I went back in there and did the same thing, and just flicked my line out there and swung into the little house of rocks, and the line went tight, and the fish took off and all over the pool, not quite down into the rapid like last time. But as I pulled this fish in closer, I looked at it and I'm like, there is no way that is a different steelhead than the one I caught 4 days before. It was like deja vu, the same biggest steelhead of my life, same coloring, everything. And I just kind of sat there in disbelief. And to this day, it feels like that second one didn't happen. It was so weird. It's so crazy for a fish like a winter steelhead that is moving so quickly upriver and traveling through to see the same one twice. From a personal fish story, that one certainly stands out.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I mean,
so,
it's the same.
They're special creatures. They're crazy, so.
Wow. No, that's, I like it. Awesome story. You just have me like sitting on the edge of my seat there listening. So Zach, you know what? October, we're here. The fish are moving in the system.
Yeah.
Here we are. What do you got to say to any of the guys and girls that are out there fishing right now? Targeting these magnificent beasts.
Enjoy every moment. It's not your wild creatures in wild places are pretty special. Enjoy every moment. Don't get too caught up in the numbers of fish. I would plead as a guide and a fisherman to everybody's got a different level where their day is made. But if your day is made with one fish or two fish and you happen to get there, consider stopping or looking around and smelling the roses for a while. The wild steelhead up and down the West Coast are in a lot of trouble, and we all need to be asking ourselves what level of impact is okay. And it's a personal question. It's not a personal question, but we need to we want to fish for them. Fishing for them helps us care about them, but we need to know that we have an impact. Even as catch and release fishermen, we have an impact on these fisheries. So hopefully we're all keeping that in mind as we have our good days on the water and aren't overdoing it.
Man, well said. Love it. So definitely love it. You summed it right up there. So if someone wanted to get a hold of you guys, reach out to you, ask you a few questions, subscribe to the magazine, follow you, where can they do that? Where can they find all your handles and all that sort of stuff?
Oh yeah. Swingthefly.com is the website to visit for Swing the Fly magazine. My contact info is on there as well. And Swing the Fly has a Facebook page and should be more active Instagram page, Swing the Fly. But most of the info, swingthefly.com.
Awesome. Zach, I'm going to make sure I put all those details within our show notes here for today. Listeners, I want to thank you guys. And Zach, I want to thank you as well for being a part of the show. This has been awesome. Learned so much. I love that story at the end there.
Oh, yeah. Thanks very much for having me, Greg. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. Anytime. All right, guys. Thanks. You've been listening to the Fly Fishing Insider podcast. If you like this podcast episode, please let us know. Leave a review and subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast listening platform.